Thank you guys for having me here. I'm Kevin Vanderweg, your state representative, and excited to talk about this issue. I'll give you a little background and my perspective kind of on what's going on and how this affects what's going on in the legislature and what the future looks like. I don't think it was anybody's intention in the legislature to ever not fully fund education. I think what came about and something that I care deeply about and believe in is that in order for a child to learn, they have to be healthy, they have to have a place to live, and they have to not be hungry. And that's, over time, like Mike mentioned, the state has spent less on education and more money on other programs. And those other programs are in competition with education. We are, I think, very fortunate in this state to have every child have access to health care through APA Health. And that's a great program, and it ensures that our children are going to be healthy and thus they'll become healthy adults. But that puts pressure on education budgets. Same with making sure that there's housing available and making sure that there's food available. So we got into the situation where we were, and the court decision, and I'm talking most of the words I'm going to talk about are the Democratic perspective from the House of Representatives. The Senate is different, and the Republican Party is different. I think most of us were excited and relieved the way the court's findings in McCleary, because we were anxious and excited to use this as a mechanism to put more funding into education. I always want to fund more into education. The McCleary decision specifically is interesting, and one part of it that I do oppose is actually the jurisdictional issues that Mike also mentioned, where they retained, what's the word you used?
They retain jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction, yeah, I guess that's the correct word. They retain jurisdiction. I'm big on the divisions of government. We have an executive branch, we have a legislative branch, and we have a judicial branch, and those lines, in my mind, should be very clear. They should be bold lines. And the fact that the court is watching us is something that is somewhat troubling to me, but something also that we are not fighting. We are doing exactly what they want to do, and we're going to report back to them. There was already one report done in December, and as it was mentioned, there will be another one due after we finish the legislative session. So although that's troubling to me, and I think it's troubling to a lot of other folks that are supporters of the divisions of government, that is something that we're going to follow and do. The amount of funding that needs to go into fully fund education is something that is somewhat up for argument. And there are some other there's some numbers being tossed around. What we believe in the House of Representatives, and actually I'll just use this one. What we're using, and we work off of biennium, so this is a 2-year thing, and so the state starts a new biennium July 1st of 2013, and that'll last us until June 30th of 2015, and a lot of the components of the McCleary decision are going to be phased in between now and 2018. It would be $1.4 billion for this coming biennium, and I'll give you a quick breakdown. I hope I don't bore anybody, but I'll just go through this list really quickly. The transportation formula was, and before I get into this, I should back up, I'm sorry. Mike mentioned the legislation that we've already passed, and that was 2 bills, 2261 and 2276, I believe are the 2 numbers. And the court really felt that if those bills that we've already passed were fully funded, that McCleary would be met. And so parts of these bills are, for instance, the transportation formula. One thing that the court said was kids can't learn if they can't get to school. And we need to make sure that there's ample bus transportation and methods for kids to get to school. That will cost us about $141 million to implement, and then it goes up to about $232 by the time it's fully implemented. Material supplies and operating costs is something that is very basic, and that's when you think of basic education, you think of the stuff that makes classrooms run, the materials and the cost to operate a school. That's the biggest part of the McCleary decision. This biennium will cost us about $600 million to fund that, and that skyrockets up all the way up to $1.5 billion by the time it's fully funded. Reduce K-3 class size. Obviously, when kids are that age, and I got a couple of young kids myself, they are sponges and they're just ready for information. And right now, the ratio is about 25.2 students, and we're going to get that down to 17 students. That will cost us this year $218 million, and that goes up steeply also to $1.1 billion by the time it's fully implemented. Implementing all-day kindergarten is something that I've really been a fan of, and we've tried to get going since I was part of the legislature, and I'm excited that it's finally going to take off. I think all-day kindergarten is one of the best, most basic things we can do to help our kids. They are so ready to learn at that age. That is $90 million to do this biennium, and it will go up to $350 million by the time it's fully implemented. For the kindergarten, the way we're phasing that in is the schools that have the highest free and reduced lunch will be funded first, down to the schools that have the least amount of free and reduced lunch. Salary allocations, the Supreme Court found in the McCleary decision that levy dollars should not be being used to pay classified administrative people that work in the schools, and that is happening, and that needs to stop. And I think just about every school district does it to some extent. That will be $170 million, and will be just shy of $700 million by the time it's fully implemented. And then a couple other things that we're I think, pretty passionate about doing that I do not believe in, and I'm not positive on all this stuff, but I do not believe this was part of the McCleary decision, was the Career and College Ready Plan, which is something we developed, and that's more geared towards junior high type kids, getting them ready for college and for their careers afterwards. So that's a lot of money, obviously, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of competing interests against the education budget, and we don't want to put, if we put all our money towards education, those kids might not be ready to learn because they might have a lot of other issues going on in their home life, and a lot of us feel that those issues need to be addressed first. So we have to come up with some funding, some funding mechanisms, and that'll be interesting to see at what level this is going to be decided on when we finish session, and then after that, what the court feels about that level. The Senate Republican, so we're looking at a 1.4 billion number, and the Senate Republicans, the last I heard, were more at a $500 million level. So there's a big difference between those two, and on top of that, so if we have a 1.4 number in the House's mind, we already have a $900 million shortfall. So the biennium that is ending June 30th of 2013, we always have a balanced budget in the state, but right now we're about $900 million short, and then we always leave a ending fund balance in case the economy takes another little dip. We have money to pay for things because the state can't. The federal government actually is the only one that can write checks without money in the bank. Every other government, from your local governments to the state, have to have money in the bank before we can pay for things. So we're going to try to have a $500 million ending fund balance. So that's a $3 billion picture that we have to come up with, which is it sounds like a daunting task, and it is, but we've had to deal with some very difficult budget numbers over the last 5 years. So I'm remaining hopeful that we will be able to do that. There are a number of different ways that we can obviously get revenue. One of the hang-ups the last 6 years or so have been some Amity initiatives that have had different numbers. They've been passed pretty consistently, almost every year, I believe. At one point, we suspended one, and in order to suspend an initiative, unless you have 2/3, in order to suspend an initiative, it has to already be in effect for 2 years. Sorry if I said that confusing. But so they started passing close to every year, and there was just one passed this last fall. That, along, much like McCleary, has gone through a very lengthy court battle. Our Constitution is very explicit, much like our education language, it's very explicit that the legislature needs a 50% vote to raise or lower taxes. It says right there. I mean, there's not much arguments, but it takes a long time to go through a Supreme Court battle. That issue was heard though last September, and we're really hopeful on what the outcome will be. And I hope I'm not stepping out of bounds here because this was on the blog, but so I think it's you can gear it to be public knowledge. But as a courtesy, well, first of all, the Supreme Court comes out with their rulings every Thursday. So every Thursday they come up with a new batch of rulings, and tomorrow's Thursday. As a courtesy, the Supreme Court notifies the legislature on what rulings they're going to come out with tomorrow. They don't tell us what the ruling's going to be or what the vote is or anything, but they tell us what rulings are coming up. So this afternoon they told us that tomorrow the 2/3 to raise revenue initiatives will be announced, which is exciting, and I think I feel very confident that the Tim Ivan initiatives will be vacated. I see no other way that they could possibly find any other way. I think it'll probably be, if I was to guess, an 8-to-1 vote. There's obviously some sort of minority, or they would have put it out once the majority opinion was written last fall. The minority can hold an opinion for 180 days. So I would assume the majority wrote an opinion right after the case was heard, and that minority report held the report for as long as they could, and that 180 days is up tomorrow. So that will be exciting, and if it comes out the way I believe it's going to come out, it certainly gives us a lot more options on ways that we can fund McCleary and other things that we find important to the state. So I think with that, I'll wrap it up. Thank you.